Welcome to TechGuru. TechGuru is a channel of meditativeness, zen, and the passing off of wisdom. We interview really exciting people in the tech space, and today we have our very first guest, Ratinder Ahuja, who's a total badass. He's the former CTO of McAfee of the networking and mobile business units. He's spun off 4 startups, and he's currently on his 5th as the CEO of ShieldX, a cloud security startup with 30 million plus in funding and 50 plus employees. He's a practicer of qigong, martial arts. He's done one-legged standing meditation for up to 2 hours at a time, and he's locked himself in a dark room for up to 2 weeks to reset his brain. Let's go meet him.
I'll give you a couple of stories, some from my graduate student days, others when I was going through my martial arts journey, others when I was working on various startups, trying to solve some hard problems. So one example was I was finishing up my doctorate, and as a part of your doctorate, you have to do something called a prelim, where you come in and present the problem statement. So I was at a stage where all my coursework, everything was done, and I had to present my prelim. And in the same week, I also had my first degree black belt test coming up. And the same week, I had a job interview out in Silicon Valley here. So I was in Iowa. I went to graduate school in Iowa State. So now this is where training comes in, right? Because all these are very critical things. You have to pass your prelim, you have to pass your black belt test, and you go get a job. So I felt that years of training finally culminated in me getting the prelim successfully done, finishing off my black belt test, passing the black belt test the same week, and flew back from Silicon Valley with my first job offer. So this is one such example of many things coming together and turning out to be okay. And I could have said, I'll not do my black belt test and I'll pass on that, or I'll go get a job later sometimes. But I felt my training was to the point where I could easily take this challenge, and that changed everything, right? So I was on my way to get my doctorate, I finished my black belt, and I got a job offer. Awesome. Other examples are, so for example, I'd started my first company, and this is a long time ago, in 93, 94 timeframe. And that company was a direct application of my doctoral dissertation, which was connecting different networks together. And as you know, it was just 3 of us building the core software, and it's hard programming problems to solve. And I remember working on something for 36 hours straight. I was so engrossed in it that it didn't matter to me, and I kept on going till it was all done. Oh wow! So I think and that helped build the product. We won competitive bake-offs, and that company was acquired by Cisco Systems, by the way. Other examples are where...
So the first example is when you got your black belt and PhD at the same time. And the second example is when you sold off your first company to Cisco.
But to get to that point, there was some fair amount of innovation and hard work to be done to actually build the software, make it work flawlessly, right. Debug issues as they come along. And this particular stint, I still remember, I was up straight working for 36 hours.
What was the bug that you were trying to fix?
It was a really strange bug. So our software ran on different platforms, Windows, Sun operating systems. And it turns out, this is kind of esoteric, in certain architectures, you cannot, if you have a 4-byte boundary, then you cannot access things in the middle. So Sun's architecture was like that because they wanted you to bring in 4 bytes at a time. Yeah. Other architectures would let you look at things, at smaller boundaries. So when we were porting code, this was the definition of where you can access this 4-byte stream had to be defined. And in Sun's case, this particular architecture, the entire system would go out of, the whole stack would get lost, nothing would make sense. And I remember going through assembly language in this trance-like state and just hit me. This is what has happened. So that was an example of...
So you just grinded through the problem for 36 hours until...
It's almost meditative. It's almost meditative, where the tools don't work, right? The debuggers don't work. You look at the code and say, there's nothing wrong with this code. Yeah. And you just have to sort of get into this, this state of mind where your intuition kicks in almost.
Yeah.
I felt that some stages, your intuitive powers do contribute.
Awesome.
And those get built over time as you concentrate on things for a long time. You get into these meditative states that help you get that clarity.
Awesome. And how many hour work weeks were you doing when you ran your first startup?
Yeah, those were intense, and I remember we were funding this ourselves. So we had me and my co-founders had a daytime job. We were consulting during the day.
Yeah.
And then we were writing code at night. So this was intense. I mean, you're starting 6 in the morning. Right. And going all the way till 1 to 2 a.m. in the morning, doing your day work, and then working on our startup.
Yeah.
So we did this for almost a year and a half till the product was ready. And we were shipping. So.
Okay. So 6 in the morning till 1 or 2 a.m. Oftentimes. Pretty much every day. Okay. Wow.
But it was great because we jump started it without any funding. Self started the company.
Awesome. And when it first got acquired, was that the feeling of like true validation or confidence that you knew you could take something, have hard work, and then be successful at it?
Yeah. So what happens is so there's a strategy behind all of this, right? And so you can ask me, hey, how come you've done 4 startups? The 5th one. What's the method behind the madness? Can anybody do this? And I say, yes, everybody can do this, provided you understand the model. So the fundamental model is that as trends change, they have an impact on the marketplace. So now your knowledge of the marketplace and the vision of how the trends are evolving give you the understanding saying that there is an impact to the marketplace that I can take advantage of. And now you have to act. You have to build something, you have to go then position it and see if it's a profitable position. So this cycle is the classical, if you study Art of War, if you study the classical text on strategy, this is the cycle that is prescribed. Mm-hmm. So once you understand this, then the dangers come. The dangers come because your knowledge of the marketplace is incomplete. Your vision could be flawed, and whatever actions you take could be deficient. You're not building the right thing. It's not working. And then when you try to position it in the market rejects it. So it's not a profitable outcome. So all of these things can possibly go wrong, and strategy dictates that they will go wrong, and you have to just iterate to make it perfect. And what is interesting in my mind is if I can engage on this process of continuous improvement and take it to a point where a profitable outcome occurs, then I feel validated that the concept of strategy worked.
Yeah. So you've been able to apply a lot of the teaching from the Art of War into the startup life.
Absolutely. It's 100% based on that. Every startup that I've done has its roots in that thinking, saying, what is changing today? What is a big trend that is going to impact a market?
Yeah.
So for example, ShieldX is all about cloud security. And the concept is simple. As enterprises adopt multi-cloud architectures, then the way they've thought about security has to change. And the traditional systems that were used to provide security don't fit well into this model. So that's the knowledge and the vision that I started with, and then we started to build a company and executed on this, placed in the market, got early wins, and then we are on the cycle to continuously improve that.
As someone who's on the forefront of the security space, what are the biggest challenges the security market will have to face, and especially when it comes to government hacking and the U.S. trying to defend itself from cyber hacking?
Yeah, so this is a never-ending trend. It'll never go away. Yeah. And you can sort of go back to the earliest days of bank robbers to fast forward all the way to now. So I think the mechanisms of attacks will change because where your assets are placed change, or what you value has changed.
Right.
So today, for example, your privacy is almost as valuable as your money. Mm-hmm. So this concept didn't exist 20 years ago. Nobody thought that I could take your personal data and somehow monetize it. Mm-hmm. So and over time, there'll be other assets that are equally important. For example, sentiment. Who would have thought that sentiment would be a valuable asset? But as you can see from the election hacking concepts that have been talked about, that if I can change your way of thinking, right, then then I can have an outcome, right? And so this is a security risk too. I mean, who would have thought that changing the way you think is a security issue?
Right.
And of course, then you can go towards hard assets of computers, and those are the classical issues anyway.
Yeah.
If you look at how you will be using compute going forward, you'll be thinking about more wearable devices, right? You'll be thinking of artificial reality. You'll be thinking of self-driving cars. There'll be more automation in your life, and every one of those is a potential target. Mm-hmm. So you can see as some of these trends take shape, as you start using virtual reality in your day-to-day work, and you can imagine the kind of threats that might create.
Yeah.
So that's how the security market will evolve, because it's simply tracking the other trends that are taking shape.
Absolutely. I think someone pointed out a figure that either a significant portion or the majority of all IoT devices on the market right now have already been compromised or hacked. So like as you're saying, as we get more autonomous and connected, I guess what were the security challenges? Like how would we even begin to tackle something that vulnerable as a security standpoint?
Right, and IoT is an interesting one because here you have a concept of the supply chain. So these IoT devices are built all over the world. The components come from all over the world, they get assembled somewhere, software gets written somewhere else. So you can see there's a big supply chain integrity problem. And this will get exploited, and it already has been exploited. You've heard of cameras being compromised. They all had a simple password. And then once these cameras were everywhere, hackers got into them and turned them into a bot army.
Okay.
Right. So you have to.
What is that?
So meaning each camera can be now used to
spy on someone.
Spy and create traffic and do all kinds of things.
Okay.
So we can turn it into a traffic bot, do denial of service, flood the links.
Also, they have control over the traffic signals as well. Okay.
Well, right. So this and this is a new phenomenon because only recently have these small cameras become so cheap. With $20 you can buy a camera. Yeah. And now they're everywhere, right? Every house will have 10 of these things.
Right.
And the supply chain of those is not understood. Who built them? Who wrote the software for it?
Correct. Yeah.
So this is a problem because you as a consumer are gravitating towards cost. So you say, hey, this is $20. This is $100. I'm going to get a $20 one. And you're not paying attention to any supply chain issues with that.
Okay.
So that's a problem.
So does it make sense for us to have like a unified protocol or unified software for connected devices?
I think so. So there is a need for regulation, which says all these connected devices must conform to certain standards. Mm-hmm. California just took the first step in that. So they just issued a law recently where where each device, if it's compromised, it has to be reported.
Yeah.
So this standardization has to come along. Otherwise, you'll have this vast array of systems that are not conformant, that'll have different types of vulnerabilities, different types of attacks. So yes, I think that's an important step.
How different was your day to day, or the changes that you made in terms of your role?
So the way my schedule and the programming that I go through, it's fairly consistent. So and one thing I do keep constant is the time I have to take during the day for my workouts and my martial arts.
Right.
So that time is fixed. So that every day between 5 and 6 I'll be at the gym or doing taekwondo, and the rest of the day can evolve around it. It can start at for example, just a few days ago I was on a call with some companies in the Middle East. Uh-huh. and it was 2 a.m. here. Yeah. And it was 9 a.m. there. So we it's a global marketplace these days. Today we have partners and customers from Japan, Hong Kong, India, all the way up to Australia and New Zealand, Europe, Middle East, South Africa. So we do find ourselves working in a 24/7 world. Okay. Now, so you say, hey, this is extremely difficult. Humans are not designed for this. Right. So I think we evolve and come to realize that as long as there is certain pillars that you can gravitate around, then you can accomplish this. So for my case, it is the 2 hours that I take to go to go to the gym and do my taekwondo.
Okay, so this is early morning?
No, so this is 5 to 6 in the evening.
Okay,
So typically
so that's your regimented schedule and
Yes.
everything else is flexible,
yes.
depending on calls with international
Correct.
business merchants. Okay.
Correct. So we'll end up, doing calls, like I said, midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., start early in the morning.
Okay.
So you get to figure out how to revolve things around.
What's maybe the most important habit that you feel that you've developed over, I guess, the course of your professional life?
The most important habit, I would say, would be consistency.
Okay.
So no matter what you do, you pick and by the way, this will be important for students. It'll be important for people that are starting out, and a lot of people will come along and say, I don't know what I should be doing. And the answer is really simple. It's, what do you want to be a willing sacrifice towards? Once you can answer that question, whether it's drawing or music or programming or running or whatever it is, but once you find that, hey, I'm willing to be a sacrifice for this thing,
Okay.
then that is your calling.
Yeah.
And now you do need to train yourself to be consistent. Sometimes the alignment is so perfect that consistency just comes naturally.
Yeah.
And in other cases, you have to train yourself to be consistent. So in my case, for example, ever since I can remember, my evening workouts have been there, right? So I can go back to my high school days, and I can still remember that hour was sacred.
I see.
Right, and it's been that way ever since. I do Taekwondo, Wednesday, Friday, and that's been there ever since. I do running Sunday morning, and that's been there ever since. I go gym the other days in the evening, and that's been there ever since. And the rest of the stuff will automatically fit in. You can study hard, you can read, you can do whatever else you want, and this all comes together. But you have to make it a consistent thing.
Awesome. So in your case, consistency of exercise and workout has been like your pillar, and everything else kind of falls outside of that.
It supports it.
Supports it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you use the word like sacrifice. So can you explain a little bit more about?
Yeah. So let's say you like drawing.
Yeah.
Right. And when you say, I just love drawing, I'm going to draw and draw and draw, and I'm going to express my creativity that way.
Yeah.
And when you do that, there will be challenges, right? There will be things that will call you away from that. There's things that will distract from that. And you say, no, I'm going to not go see a movie. I'm going to sacrifice that because I'm working on something right now, right? So you're willing. Nobody's forcing you,
right?
But you're a willing sacrifice to this, right?
Yeah.
You can. I used to love math. I would just go buy math books, and I would solve all the questions in the back of the book, every book I could get.
Wow.
And I would just do that for hours and hours and hours. It was just fun.
Oh wow.
Right. Nobody was asking us to study those things, but I just did it. Right. I remember my dad my dad was an engineer, so he would buy me little kits, little electrical engineering kits, little building, little models, and I would just love those, and I would just tinker with that forever, right? And so that's an example of where your love for that act causes you not to be distracted by other things.
Yeah, so you truly had the excitement of like the STEM focused brain of sciences, maths, and engineering.
Yeah. So, and my mom would say, hey, you should become a doctor, and I would say, no, I love engineering.
How do you manage to get enough sleep each night?
Yeah, so
with like a very varied schedule.
Yeah, so so if you can understand the human mind and body, and you say, so what exactly, what is the sleeping process? So if you search on something called brain waves, so it turns out when you're sleeping, your brain goes into a set of waves called the delta waves, and these are certain frequencies. So when we're talking like this, we're in something called the beta state. When you're doing meditation, you're in something called the alpha state, and when you're being creative, it's called the theta state, and sleep is called delta. So now, meditation techniques have understood this for centuries. And whether it's breathing techniques or using sound, using various yoga or qigong techniques, they're basically manipulating some of these mental states, visualization techniques. So what I learned over time was that I could actually use these tools to regulate my sleep cycle.
Okay.
So if I need to sleep right now, all I have to do is get into the delta state, and I'll be sleeping.
Oh, interesting. So you use meditation as a tool for faster sleeping.
Yes, and you guys are studying, So you must understand this. There is something called theta frequencies. So then you have to be creative. Your mind has to go into something called theta. So go and read on this, and you will find there's a number of techniques to induce yourself in the theta state, and that's the creativity and intuition state.
Yeah.
And you can use that using visualization techniques. You can use that using sound techniques. So once you can understand the root of how this works, then, then it's just another system.
That's amazing. Or what are some of the techniques to get more creative?
Yeah. So if you look at some of the yoga techniques and breathing techniques, so there's a number of breathing techniques you can use to get the brain to fire up. Visualization techniques, and basically trying to get into the theta state, which is a certain frequency that kicks it. So I tried an experiment once. I gave the theta frequency CDs to my engineers, and one engineer put that on, and next day he told me that, hey, he put this on like at 9 in the morning, and then he was like productive throughout the day till he took the thing off. so experiment with it and see what works.
Okay, awesome.
So, yeah, and then I think along the way, I think you also have to study nutrition. You have to understand, how do you get the micronutrients in the brain? What makes the brain function? So I think all of that has to come together for you to function optimally.
And in your personal life, you've taken on a lot of challenges, like you said, a lot about martial arts and karate. And then some, which are even more interesting, is that I think you push yourself to the brink and see what you're capable of, like mentally and physically. So for instance, I think once you tried, or once maybe in between startups, you went to Chiang Mai in Thailand, and you spent 2 weeks in complete isolation darkness.
Correct. Yeah, so I was on my martial arts studying, and so if you kind of look at the history of martial arts, the Eastern martial arts, they came from something called qigong, which is the root of all martial arts. And surprisingly, qigong was started by a South Indian Buddhist monk, a prince from Kerala who went all the way to Tibet to teach Buddhism.
Okay.
So he gets there, and of course he's extremely well trained in the classical Indian martial arts. He's well trained in Indian yoga, all aspects of it, right? And he goes there to teach Buddhism, but he finds that the conditions there are so harsh that people die by the time they're 35. And he says, this is not enough time for you guys to get disciplined and learn everything. So he teaches them something that he calls bone marrow transformation exercises. This is his work of translating the vast knowledge from India into some techniques for them. So this then moved forward, and many branches of Kung Fu and Karate and Taekwondo and other things came out. So I was studying Taekwondo, and then eventually you come to the point where saying, hey, I'm not jumping any higher. I'm getting more injuries, and so I'm missing something here. So surprisingly, right next to my Taekwondo school in Mountain View, there was a qigong school, and a qigong master would sit there. So I walked by for many years. I walked by his school, and one day I said, I gotta figure this out. So I started learning qigong. Okay. So qigong is all about, and qigong has hard and soft styles. Many variations to it, but it's all about building your what we call prana, or the life force. It again integrates many techniques like breathing and visualization and sounds and movement and all kinds of things. Yeah. And it also focuses on building internal strength. Now this concept of internal strength is purposely kept vague in the arts, and it's all about controlling your endocrine system. So in your body, there's 3 master glands: the pituitary, thymus, and the hypothalamus. So they control all your endocrine system. So they control everything. The pituitary gland eventually produces human growth hormone. After some time, that production stops, and aging begins. So yoga and martial arts, they try to keep your hormonal balance going as well, and keeping it stronger as you age. And part of one such technique there is called the darkroom training. And the idea is that you stay in darkness for some extended period of time, and that stimulates the pituitary gland, okay. and that it what is called reawakens the pituitary gland, which then produces the normal growth hormones, and your aging slows down. Right, that's the concept. Yeah. So as part of that training, I went to Chiang Mai. There's a a master called Master Mantak Chia,
Okay.
and he runs that up in Thailand.
That's amazing.
And he's written many books on this. I've studied his work. The other things in what some of these esoteric arts and yoga and meditation talk about is stillness. So stillness is hard to achieve because there's just so much stimulation all the time. So this dark room meditation gets you to the stillness where you can think and think and think, and eventually there's nothing else to think. Right? You thought through, and now you're just just relaxed. Similar, there's another technique called standing meditations. So if you ask me, saying, so in your martial arts journey, what are the hardest things you've done, and where do you push yourself to the point? So the first one was this darkroom training. Along with that, there's another set of techniques called the standing meditations, where you actually stand in certain postures for 2 hours.
Okay.
And it's after all the training that I've had, when I first started to attempt the standing meditations, I could do it for like 3 minutes because gravity wins every time.
Yeah.
And the standing meditation creates a transformation of the body where it brings not the external muscular development, but the internal tendons and skeletal muscle development. So it's a different type of strength.
Okay.
So I started doing the standing meditations, which brings in this change in your structure. It also forces you to learn how to breathe, how to control your mind, because over time it becomes incredibly hard. So my test was to stand for 2 hours. So that was a challenge. Then another training was this darkroom training. So I stayed in darkness for 2 weeks. Okay. And then as part of my 6th degree black belt taekwondo testing, I had to do 1,000 kicks nonstop.
Oh, wow.
So this was just part of my training, and you just keep doing this consistently. Yeah.
That's incredible. So you enjoy testing the capabilities of your mind and body to see what you can do.
Absolutely. So it's this path of continuous improvement.
Yeah.
Right, and continue to understand how limitations come in and what are the other tools and techniques you can use to overcome these limitations.
Okay, and I'm sure that builds an extreme level of self-confidence that you can take on this really overwhelming challenge and complete it.
It gives you the calmness. It gives you the calmness saying, this is just one more thing you have to master. Yeah. And what are the tools and the steps and the processes to master this?
Are there like a few nonfiction books that you could recommend to people who are interested in kind of maybe finding direction or getting better at creation, innovation, and tech in general?
Absolutely. So I would recommend The Art of War. Mm-hmm. And there are many derivatives of this. You must find the one that appeals to you and never stop reading it, because this is just one of those things that has been there for 2,500 years. But to truly master it probably takes many lifetimes. There is no mastery of this. You're just a student. Yeah. So I would definitely recommend that you find variations of that text that suit you, and you can adapt it for all kinds of things. There are a lot of business strategy books that are very useful as well. How do you go from good to great? There's some series and books on that topic as well. So all of those are useful. I think management techniques, as we try to manage from startup, growing to scale, understanding of what methodologies and processes would take you from step to step to step. Mm-hmm. So those are some good text to read as well.
Awesome. Or is the name of the book Management Strategies, or is that just general?
So in general, okay. And there is a specific book that I like. It's called Strategy Moves.
Okay.
And it's all about how do you position yourself, deal with competition, deal with markets.
So similar to Art of War, but perhaps more business related.
Yes.
If you were, say, in your early or young adult right now, maybe between age 18 and 35, mm-hmm. What would you want to be working on given the current ecosystem?
Yeah. So I think first of all, I would say create the balance. Right. You have to be. You have to know what makes you work physically. You have to know what makes you work mentally, right. What makes you work spiritually. In fact, in the qigong practice, there is a concept called Jing Qi Shen, which in Indian Kundalini Yoga has similar concepts. But the point is, to be complete, you need to evolve your physical energy, the body, and you need to evolve your the chemical energy, your prana. which then leads to an evolved spiritual person, right? So that's the metamorphosis. Now, when you're trying to find those paths, and I think the good thing about being here is you can experiment. You can try many different approaches and see what truly aligns your mind, body, and soul behind that, right? And that's what you're looking for.
What truly excites you for work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then once you say, hey, I can be a sacrifice to this thing.
Yeah.
Then that's a good thing to explore, because then it's not work, right? You're doing it for the fulfillment. You're doing it for the fun of it.
Absolutely. But then outside of I guess cloud and security, if you could be working on a different space, what would you be working on?
Oh, absolutely. So I think these days it's so exciting with automation and artificial intelligence coming in. I think AI, virtual reality, and augmented reality is going to be a phenomenal thing. It'll change how we communicate. We wouldn't have to have done all of this. We could have done this completely through a virtual reality based system.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great time to be in school and in grad school, and trying to start something new, and look at some of these augmented experiences that will come along. How automation and AI will change every aspect of what we do today, right? The way we communicate, the phones that we use today. I think everything is going to dramatically change because of virtual reality, because of augmented reality, because of AI. Awesome. So those are good things to explore.
Awesome. So some sort of vertical with the themes of AI, automation, and virtual reality.
Center it's all about alignment too. So I'm going to align myself